It's time for Recipe of the Day. I literally say wow out loud and feel such self-satisfied pride every time I make carbonara. And I'm talking about the classic Roman Italian carbonara, where the heat of the pasta gently cooks eggs to make them form into a sauce that coats the noodles. It's like one of those really cool science cooking tricks that I am obsessed with. So if you've never done this classic carbonara before, now's your time to try it. I'm just going to tell you, sometimes in North America, when we say carbonara, people mean a creamy sauce with bacon and peas. And when I say creamy sauce, I mean sauce that has cream in it. If that's what you're thinking of, this is not that. This is the real traditional Roman dish. It is made with the pasta, of course, pasta water that you scoop out just after the pasta is done cooking, and also eggs, Parmesan cheese, salt and pepper, and pancetta. Actually, the traditional is guanciale, which is cured pork jowl, but that's harder to find in North America, so I call for pancetta, and I will just say right off the bat that you can use bacon instead. You just want one that's not as smoky flavored. I mean, you know what? Use whatever bacon you want, but if you want it to taste like the classic, pancetta doesn't have a smoked flavor. It's cured, not smoked, so you're not going to have the smoked flavor. So if you want it to taste like the classic, don't use a smoky bacon. And if you just love smoky bacon flavor, well, then use that, because, you know, one of the things about carbonara is when it's done correctly, it really tastes like the meat that you've used, because you used some of the fat right in there. And then it's this creamy sauce, so rich, so delicious. I am going to tell you how to make it now. So you're starting with a heavy duty pot. You want something with a heavy bottom because you're going to want it to retain the heat after you drain the pasta out of it. You're going to be putting the pasta back in there with your raw eggs. And so the residual heat of the pasta plus the residual heat in your pot is going to help to cook those eggs. And if your pot is really thin, it's not going to hold that heat. And you're going to end up with like a slurpier sauce. Not bad exactly, but not quite as good. So hopefully you have a pasta pot that's nice and heavy duty. You are using that. You're bringing up a pot of that water, salted water, to the boil, and you're going to cook a package of spaghetti, 1 pound of spaghetti, according to the package directions. But before you drain it, you make sure to scoop out a cup or so of the pasta cooking water. And I have a tip to help you remember how to do this, because I have forgotten so many times, and you can't just use hot water instead. You cannot, because there's no starch in just plain hot water. So you really have to make sure that you scoop out the pasta water. If you've been listening to me for a while, you know what I'm about to say. As soon as you read in a recipe that it says that you're going to be scooping out the pasta water, and I mean, you know, you read the recipe before you start cooking, right? So you're reading the recipe before you start doing anything. And when you see it say, scoop out a cup of the pasta cooking water, you immediately get out your drainer, your colander, your sieve, whatever you use to drain your pasta, put it in the sink that you drain your pasta in, like you're getting ready to drain your pasta, even though you haven't started cooking yet. And then you get like a 2-cup measuring cup, whatever scooper you're going to use, and you put that right in that strainer. Why? Now, it's not because when you go to drain your pasta, you're going to pour it over that measuring cup into the strainer. That might work, but it might tip over. It could be hot and messy. I'm not recommending that. What I want to have happen is when you're in the middle of cooking, you're listening to your podcast, you're distracted, you're not thinking, you've got that pot of pasta water that you're carrying from the stove to the sink. You're going to see that measuring cup in the strainer, and you're going to go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to scoop some of this pasta water out. And then you're going to put the pot back on the stove, and you're going to scoop some pasta water out of it. And then you go back to draining your pasta and listening to your podcast as previously planned. So that is what you're doing. You are putting a colander in the sink, and you're putting a scooper, measuring cup, something in there. Bring that pot of water, salted water, to the boil. And while that's coming up to the boil and while the spaghetti's cooking, you're going to cook up your pancetta and get your eggs and everything else ready. So in a large skillet over medium heat, you're going to warm 2 teaspoons of olive oil. You can skip the olive oil because there is going to be fat coming out of the pancetta or bacon or whatever you're using. But I do find that it helps it crisp up a little little bit, up to you if you want to skip that or not. And then you're adding 6 to 8 ounces of your pancetta or bacon that's raw, uncooked, that you've chopped up. And I say 6 to 8 ounces because that's really up to you. I like tons in there. I want it to be really, really meaty and have all that fatty, delicious flavor. If you want less, you can use less. And you're going to cook that, stirring occasionally until the fat has rendered out and the pancetta is lightly browned on some of the sides. Then take it off the heat. Okay. And then you are using for this recipe 3 eggs and 3 egg yolks. So in a medium-sized bowl, you can crack in 3 eggs. And then for the other 3 eggs, separate them, putting the whites into a separate container and just add the yolks to your 3 eggs. Those whites, you can throw them out or save them for a nice egg white omelet. Put them in a container in the fridge, but you are not using them in this recipe. Whisk them really well, but you're not trying to make them frothy. You're not trying to get like peaks out of them or anything. Just whisk them till they're well combined. And then you're going to stir in 2 ounces of freshly grated Parmesan cheese. That's about 1 3/4 cup. You don't want to use the container of that powdered stuff. You really, really want something freshly grated. You don't want to get the stuff that's already shredded from like the deli counter because often that has coating on it that can get in the way of the melting process here. Get yourself a wedge of Parmesan cheese and grate it on a microplane or a rasp or whatever shredder you want to use. I find it better to use the weight here because depending on what kind of shredder you use and all sorts of things, you're going to get different volumes. So I said 2 ounces. I'm also just going to say here that the actual traditional Roman recipe would be made with Pecorino Romano, but I find that a lot of North Americans find the flavor of that to be a little bit strong and maybe even off-putting. I know a lot of people who don't like it, so I use the Parmesan instead. If you want to experiment, you can go for it. Use 2 ounces of the Pecorino Romano or half and half Parmesan and Pecorino, and then you'll know if you like it or not. So you are whisking those 2 ounces of Parmesan into the egg mixture and add in a good pinch of salt and some black pepper. A nice grind of fresh black pepper is good in there. Now it's going to be time to drain that pasta soon. And what I'm going to say is you want your pancetta and the fat from the pancetta to be nice and warm. So before you drain your pasta, put that pancetta back on the heat and just warm it through over medium just till it's warm. You do not have to keep all of the fat in there if you don't want to. You need a good 2 tablespoons minimum because that's forming the emulsion with the cheese and the egg and the starchy water. You do need the 2 tablespoons. You can scrape out the rest of it if you want and discard it or save it for another use or leave it all in there. That is up to you. And yes, I leave it all in there. Okay, so your eggs and cheese are ready and you've warmed up your pancetta and you are about to drain your pasta, but you see your measuring cup in your colander. And so you put your pasta pot back on the stove, scoop out a good cup or so of that hot water, set it aside, then drain the pasta, and then you are returning it back to the pot it cooked in because remember, we want the residual heat from that pot. Then scrape the pancetta and the fat that you're using from the skillet into that pasta along with about a 1/4 cup of the pasta water. Give it a quick stir and then pour in your egg mixture and use some tongs to really quickly stir it. Stir, 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 stir. The egg mixture is going to thicken and start coating the hot pasta. It's mixing with the water. If the sauce is too thick or dry, add more pasta water a little at a time. Give it a taste. Add more salt and pepper if you want. Transfer it to the plate and serve with more Parmesan cheese. That is what you do. I'm just going to give you a few little extra tips here. If you're not serving it right away, like if it's really like a minute away from serving time, what can start to happen is the pasta starts soaking up more and more of that water because it's hot and pasta's thirsty and it just wants more, right? So you have more of that pasta water. Just wait until you are actually ready to serve. Give the pasta another stir and then drizzle in a little bit more of that water. Stir it all up and then serve it. It's going to be nice and glistening and beautiful. Sometimes I end up having to add like 2 rounds of pasta water. Like I'm making a salad. It's not ready yet. I splash in a little more pasta water, give it a stir, keep making my salad, set the table. Oh no, the pasta's gotten dry again. A little bit more pasta water. It's fine. You can keep doing that. So that is how you make sure it's nice and glistening and moist and just a really nice sauce coating the pasta, even if you take an extra minute or 2 or 3 after you have mixed it all together in the pot before plating it. You do that. You don't add water when it's on the serving plates. And then I will also tell you that I am delighted to report that you can reheat carbonara. The leftovers are usable. I was actually worried that because we're talking about partly cooked eggs here, and you know what? I didn't say this earlier and I'm going to say it now. The eggs are kind of at a soft set stage in this recipe, so they are not fully cooked, which means that there is a slight chance for salmonella poisoning, or a slight risk. I shouldn't say chance. Chance makes it seem like you want it. A slight risk for salmonella poisoning. If you are concerned at all, if you're pregnant, immunocompromised, elderly, or just not sure, you can buy pasteurized eggs, and that's going to reduce that risk quite a bit. So that is what you need to do if you're worried about consuming not fully cooked eggs. But anyhow, I thought that reheating the carbonara in any method, microwave, on the stove, would start causing the egg sauce to coagulate into scrambled egg. And it can. If you heat it over high heat, it will. But if you do it slowly and if you add hot water to it while doing it, it really protects it and works. So what you do is you get your carbonara, however much you want to have, and you put it into a microwave safe bowl, add a small drizzle of hot water and stir, and then use the defrost setting or 50% power for 30 seconds at a time. Stir in between every interval of 30 seconds until it's warmed through. If it isn't silky and saucy at any point, just add a little bit more hot water. And that's going to work out really, really well. You don't want it piping crazy hot because then you do risk cooking those eggs, but just nicely warmed through. Same thing on the stove. Put the pasta into a saucepan, heat it over low heat, stirring in a little drizzle of hot water at the beginning and then a bit more as you heat, and stir if it looks dry ever just until it's warmed through. So you can do what I did and make a whole batch of carbonara for yourself when you are home alone, and then eat it every single day for several days, and it's going to be delicious and amazing in taste. I'm going to say bacony even though it's pancetta, but it is so good. You're going to love this so much. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is May 7th of 2026. And I will just say that if you make this and it wows you as much as it wows me, make sure you leave a comment and a 5-star rating on this recipe. That will help other people know that they have got to try it. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, cookfor2.us, and this podcast recipe of the day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.